Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 24th, 2025. Ray McGovern will be here with us in just a moment. What are the origins of the 28-point plan, and why now? But first, this. History tells us every market eventually falls. Currencies collapse. And look at where we are now. 38 trillion in national debt. Stocks at record highs defying gravity. So what happens next? Groceries, gas, housing, everything's going up. And this dollar, it buys less every day. When the system breaks, your stocks won't save you and your dollars won't either. But one thing will: gold. I've said it on my show for years. Gold survives collapse. Central bankers know this and billionaires know it. That's why they're buying more. Is it too late to buy, or is it just the right time? Call my friends at Lear Capital to find out. Ask questions, get the free information. There's no pressure, and that's why I buy my gold and silver from Lear. And right now, you can get up to $20,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com today. Ray McGovern, welcome here, my dear friend. I want to dive deeply into the 28-point plan. I don't know if it's a subterfuge to keep people's eyes off of the Israelis attacking Lebanon and the United States about to attack Venezuela. We'll get to that eventually. But do we know the origins of the 28-point plan? I mean, who speaks for Russia? Who speaks for the United States? Is it these two billionaire buddies of Trump and Putin?
No, Putin's personal representative in the person of Kirill Dmitriev flew off to Florida to talk with Steve Witkoff for 3 days at the end of October. Therein lies the solution. We know from pretty reliable sources that Ukrainian National Security Council chief Umerov was also there for a while. So they whittled this thing together in a kind of a talking points sort of way. It's just, parts of it are self-contradictory, inconsistent, and it's very, very unfinished. But the big thing is that Trump is making a big thing of it, and Putin is playing along. Now, let me introduce a extraneous factor here. First of all, I agree with those, including Alistair, who say that in mid-October, Trump finally realized that he had been diddled, that he had been led down the garden path by the likes of Kellogg and perhaps Rubio and other hardliners within the White House and State Department. So mid-October is big. After that came not only the collapse of Ukrainian forces on the front line, but also the raising of corruption charges. Very convenient to get Zelensky a little bit scared. Here's my chronology. Here's the extraneous factor. When do the nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize begin for 2026? It says, I looked it up, mid-October. Well, let's say that's October 15th. So I did a little chronology here. Oh, well, okay, October 15th. What happened on the 16th? Oh, well, Trump announced that we're going to have another summit. It'll be at Budapest, and we're going to get to a final solution of the Korean crisis at the 16th. Okay, 17th. Zelensky comes to the White House, and Trump says, no, don't even think about those missiles, those missiles that you've been trying to get. We're not going to give them to you. The 17th, okay? Whoa, there was a big backlash, okay? So Trump had to do a little dancing and took a lot of flack. So what do we have on the 22nd? We have the imposition of really tough sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, the two big Russian oil companies. Okay, that's the 22nd. But the Russians like to say "Adnaka." But what happens on the 23rd, the day after the imposition of these terrible sanctions, which even Scott Bessent doesn't place any store by, but that's another thing. What happened on the next day? Oh, Kirill Dmitriev is sent by Putin to Florida to talk to Witkoff, to talk to Umerov when he shows up, and they chisel this thing together. It's more the nature of talking points. The big deal is that Putin said, well, yeah, let's consider that. That could be a basis for the final settlement. That's really interesting. So what do I see here? I see that Trump, I mean, I blanch when I hear myself say this. He's partially motivated by wanting to have a Nobel Peace Prize. And if he gets maybe something going by Thanksgiving and maybe even enough going for a ceasefire by Christmas, oh my God, the nominations close on January 31st. Okay. Now, people might think that's a little ridiculous. 2 months ago, I would have thought so. But look at what Trump has said about the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think what Trump is doing here is giving the Europeans, getting them out of the flow of things. The Europeans are very scared, but they're powerless. And that's where I differ with many of my colleagues. The Europeans have no troops. They have no money. They have no leverage. Okay. The leverage is not with the Europeans. So what leverage does Trump have? Well, not much, but I think Trump understands that Putin would rather have a negotiated settlement of some kind based on current realities. So he's playing on that. That's very, very little leverage. And you could see that in the points that are being discussed. You could see that in Trump saying this morning, oh, wow, this is going to be great. We're well on our way. What did he exactly say? Oh, yeah, it's time for Europe to go it alone. Well, that's what the Guardian is saying. Here's Trump. Big progress is being made in the peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. And of course, we have Rubio and even Kellogg singing the same song over the weekend. So what do I foresee? I see some real negotiations. Russia's not going to give up much because it doesn't have to.
Right.
Is adopting this nonchalant, dismissive attitude. Okay, we'd like negotiation. We're always open to that, but we're just as soon go ahead and finish the damn thing off with a special military operations.
Take a listen to President Putin, Zelensky, President Zelensky, a gloomy President Zelensky yesterday, who pretty much is saying, look, I have to choose between the indignity of giving up all this land that I believe is part of Ukraine and the loss of my most valuable partner, the United States. Chris, cut number 3.
Зараз один з найважчих моментів нашої історії.
This is one of the most difficult moments in our history. The pressure on Ukraine is now at its most intense. Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner, or 28 difficult points, or an extremely harsh winter. The most difficult and further risk are life without freedom, without dignity, without justice, and believing someone who has already attacked us twice.
And believing someone who has already attacked us twice. I guess he's forgotten about Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 and that subterfuge. Why would Putin trust any negotiation that the Europeans participated in? He wouldn't.
He wouldn't, and that's why they're excluded. That's why Trump has ruled them out. Now, the Europeans are described as being really enraged at this, but they have no leverage. As I said before, they have no money, they have no arms, they have nothing without the United States. That's the all-encompassing reality for me.
What do you think Zelensky will do? Doesn't he risk not only the loss of his presidency, but maybe the loss of his life if he concedes to this?
I think it's I think it's really a case of Zelensky will stay there as long as the U.S. and Britain think he can be useful. There's no real outside person that can take his place right now. Part of these 28 points are elections in Ukraine, and ipso facto, Zelensky would be out. So I see the U.S. and Britain and the others, no, U.S. at least, saying, look, Zelensky can hang around as long as he does what he's told. Now, as I say before, Zelensky's going to have to do what he's told. Now, if he finds that, what do you call it? If that's a dignity thing, well, all right. I mean, if he accepts what's going on here, as he will have to, well, he's got a dignity problem, but he also has a problem if he doesn't accept it. Now,
Yeah.
if he doesn't accept it, well, he can only be really, really dumb not to accept it. Why? Because the Europeans have no leverage. They have no troops. They have no money. So if the Europeans can persuade a dumb Zelensky, look, hang in there, we'll support you for as long as it takes now that the U.S. is out of there. He's really dumber than I thought he was. I don't think he will do that. I think he'll accept that. He sort of made some motions in that regard. And his people, Umerov, for example, have been in on this. So it's not like it came as a total surprise to the Ukrainians.
The limitation of the Ukrainian troops to 600,000, that's 10 times the number that was agreed to in Istanbul in 2022 before Joe Biden and Boris Johnson interfered with it. Putin will never go along with that. I don't know where they'd get 600,000 troops, to be honest.
Well, that would be an interesting point if this was a proposal. This is just a bunch of talking points. The Russian word for plan also means sort of outline for discussion. So, to look at these specific provisions, 600,000, that's negotiable. They'll be at less than half of that at the final end of this thing. But the idea is that Trump feels some real pressure to get something done quick by the end of the year, like by Thanksgiving. What will he get by Thanksgiving? My God, it looks like Rubio and even Kellogg are saying, we're going to get something maybe Thursday, Friday, maybe Monday of next week. Could that be? It could be Russian sign-on to an umbrella sort of thing saying, we're gonna discuss this, but one of our conditions continues to be no Ukraine and NATO. And that's understood by both sides. So if they can announce a ceasefire, possibly by the end of the year or by Christmas, wouldn't that be nice? Thanksgiving and then Christmas, then Trump may feel he's on his way to getting a Nobel Peace Prize. Again,
I think you're probably onto something with respect to the president's true motivation. To him, it's the Peace Prize. The fact that peace will come about is secondary. But I mean, almost who cares what his thoughts are as long as it brings about peace? I don't see the Russians signing a ceasefire. They've said 100 times they won't. They'll sign a peace agreement that gives them what they want. They want to get rid of the Nazi ideology. I don't know how you get rid of an ideology. They want no NATO. They want their land back. Well, they'll get the land back and they'll probably get no NATO, but they're not going to get everything they want, are they? How do you get rid of an ideology, Ray?
The Russians have all the leverage here. They're winning on the battlefield. Zelensky is being discredited mostly by I think, U.S. intelligence services who are embedded in those investigatory bodies. I mean, everyone around him is charged with utter corruption. It defies, it beggars belief that Zelensky stands as pure as Caesar's wife, So, in other words, they got him where they want him. Okay, now the Russians are aware of all this, and I think they're aware. Bear in mind, talks are going on sub rosa. There are other channels, there are all kinds of channels, Witkoff and Dmitriev, Witkoff, and other people like Ushakov directly under Putin. So these things go on, and I'm not sure, but I speculate that when Trump felt this pressure after he flagrantly said, Tomahawk missiles, forget about it, okay? Well, he felt a lot of pressure and said, oh my God, I better do something. And then that's when he put on these sanctions on the 22nd. So just days later, and I'm sure Subrosi was saying, now, look, we got to do this. I gotta handle Kellogg and the company. But bear in mind, we're gonna work this out. And sure, the next thing you know, the next day, Dmitriev leaves for Florida and spends 3 days working out this plan with not Rubio, but with
Yeah, who is the de facto Secretary of State of the United States? Is it Marco Rubio? Is it Steve Witkoff? Is it Jared Kushner?
It's a fellow named Donald Trump. And the State Department is really Truth Social. I mean, good. Never thought I'd see this day, but official pronouncements come out from Truth Social. Some of them with block letters, so you take attention to that. But Rubio does what he's told. Now he made 180. Okay. Here he is yesterday in Geneva saying, "Oh, this is the cat's pajamas. We never made so much progress." Well, 2 weeks ago, he was saying, "Oh, those damn Russians, they invaded, and we have to make sure that they don't succeed in what they're doing. Look what the blah, 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 blah." So Rubio is malleable. Okay, he wants to stay titular, at least, Secretary of State, and by the way, National Security Advisor, where he's in position to be a kind of a blockage before for any credible intelligence getting to the president. Now the end is near. Trump has seen that he's been deceived by the likes of Kellogg and Rubio to an extent. When Rubio talked to Lavrov shortly after Trump said, "Hey, let's do Budapest," well, what came of that? Well, Lavrov's a diplomat. He's not going to say anything derogatory, but Rubio apparently blew it, because the next thing you know, Dmitriev is going to talk with Witkoff. So when you need talks with Witkoff, who understands what's up, okay, and who has the entree not only to Trump but to Putin. What has he met with him 6 or 7 times already? Last time for 4 or 5 hours. So when you ask me who Secretary of State is, it's Trump. And Trump relies on whoever he needs to rely on, whether it's to appease Lindsey Graham or whether it's to actually work real things out between Witkoff and whomever Putin appoints, whether it's Ushakov or whether it's Dmitriev. Dmitriev, by the way, is the economic financial czar in the Russian government. And he's the one that talks about this tunnel under the Bering Strait, talks about the magnificent economic opportunity that exists for U.S.-Russian relations. Well, that's exaggerated, but it's there. And Trump and Witkoff and these kinds of guys, well, that would really help. And why should we feel ourselves manacled by the Europeans and not pursue these opportunities? So I think that's all in the background.
Here's President Putin in military garb yesterday. Chris, cut number 2.
These people, the idea of sitting on their golden pots, hardly think about their country's fate or the fate of its people.
Ordinary people of Ukraine.
The officer corps, and even more so, the ordinary soldiers. They don't have time for such thing, but you and I have our own tasks and our own goals to achieve.
The most important of these is, without a doubt, the achievement of the goals of the special military operation and the resolution of the tasks that our fatherland and the people of Russia place before us.
The people of Russia are counting on us, they are counting on you, and they expect the results that our country truly needs. Let's get to work.
Wow. In military garb, the people of Russia are counting on us, they are counting on you, and they expect the results that our country truly needs. He's talking about the military acquisition of real estate and the expulsion of NATO and the other goals that he's been consistently pressing for the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, this is the de facto situation, Judge. The facts on the ground is what the Russians keep talking about.
Right.
And when Putin, whether he feigns this or whether he's serious, when he adopts this nonchalant thing and says, "Look, we've always been open for negotiations, but if this doesn't work out, we're just as soon, we're just as happy pursuing the special military operation until its final end. And we could do that, and we will. Now, my take on that is that's feigned. They really want something in the nature of a negotiated settlement, which gets the U.S. to guarantee that the Ukrainians won't do the same thing they did under Biden. Okay? That's clear to me. So Putin prefers that. Trump wants that. You've got a coalition, you've got a coalescing of views here. And I am hopeful that maybe not by Thanksgiving, but by the end of the year, some progress has been made. And by January 31st, the outer limit of nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize, that Trump will have something to sing about and say, hey, look, well, Gaza didn't work out all that well, but hey, how about this year? How about Ukraine?
So I'm thinking of Sergei Lavrov saying to Vladimir Putin, but what's to guarantee that a President Lindsey Graham or a President J.D. Vance or a President Marco Rubio wouldn't rearm Ukraine in 5 or 10 years, just like President Trump did during his first term?
Well, now, wait a second. Trump, all he gave him were some, we used to call bazookas, some anti-tank weapons. He didn't arm. It was Biden that armed Ukraine. So, the facts on the ground speak for themselves. The Russians have won. Ukrainians have lost. J.D. Vance has said, that's it for us. We're out of it. Ukraine is not anymore our problem. The Europeans are screaming like hell because their whole political positions, these clowns, these political hacks that bubble to the top in Germany, Merz, in UK, Starmer, in France, Macron, those people are going to lose power. And, I have to say this, their priorities to stay in power. So will they have any leverage? That's the big question. I don't think the Europeans have any leverage anymore. I think they've used it all up. And I think that Putin, that Trump has made it very clear, look, we're not even going to talk to you until this thing is over. Make all the suggestions you want. You got nothing. You got no leverage. I have very little leverage, says Trump, but I have some. Putin wants a deal, and we're going to get that deal sooner rather than later.
Ray McGovern, thank you very much, my dear friend. I think we're going to get a intelligence community roundtable in by the end of the week. I don't know when or I don't know how because it's Thanksgiving week, but we'll make it happen, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. All the best, my friend.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you. Coming up at 11:30 this morning, Larry Johnson, and at 4 this afternoon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.